Welcome to Connecting the Community podcast. I am your host, Marj Andre. I will be connecting you to people, organizations, and events that create community. I am creating this podcast in Richmond Hill, an eclectic and very culturally diverse community with lots of trees and streams and interesting people, just up the hill from Toronto. On this podcast, I'm talking with Anum Mulla, the Global Youth Strategist with the Charter for Compassion. We'll be talking about the upcoming Global Youth Conference for Compassionate Leadership for Action and Impact. It's taking place virtually on October 28th, 29th, and 30th. I would like to say that I am a volunteer with the Charter for Compassion and the Canadian Global Hub Coordinator, and I'm part of a team for Compassionate York Region and Compassionate Richmond Hill. And the city of Richmond Hill is an affirmed compassionate community. Welcome, Anum.
Hello. Thank you, Marj. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast.
Oh, you are very welcome. I've got lots of questions for you because I know this conference is coming up, but I don't really know about it. So you're going to tell us. So, Anum, you now live in New Delhi, India, but you did live in Canada at one time. Please give us some of your background info.
I did, yes. Thank you, Marj. And it always makes me so happy that you and I have that in common. Background info. So it's actually a very interesting story in terms of my link to Canada. So my father actually went to university there, shortly after which my parents got married and they lived there for quite a while. And then they moved to Saudi Arabia, which is where I was born. And a couple of years after that, I moved to India. But given that my family and I all have our Canadian citizenship, Canada was always a second home, and we would be there, as many times as I can remember during the summer. And of course, when it came to applying for colleges, my first choice was to go to Canada. So I did end up at the University of Toronto, which I know isn't too far from the wonderful compassionate community that you have so beautifully orchestrated in Toronto. And yes, so I lived downtown for about 4 years. So that is my connection, and I do miss it ever so much.
Very good. So downtown Toronto is one of my favorite places to go. So thank you for that and explanation. And actually, two of my sons went to U of T as well. So I'm very familiar with University of Toronto.
Wonderful.
So how did you become part of the Charter, and what is your job with the Charter?
Right. No, thank you so much, Marj, for asking that. I always love telling this story because I think it's truly a full circle moment as to where I am now with the Charter. So I had a big inclination towards studying compassion from a neuroscientific point of view, and as one does, I did a lot of research to see what I could do, and I came across an organization called the Charter for Compassion. And very long story short, I started taking a few of the signature courses of the Charter, namely the Essence of Compassion, the Science of Compassion, and I came in contact with the team and the Charter's executive director, Marilyn Turkovich, who kind of advised me to really take forward this interest and take compassionate integrity training, which was one of the Charter's vetted compassion-based education trainings at the time. So for quite a few years, I was a facilitator of CIT, and I kept in close contact with the Charter, and true to the phrase that the Charter always says is they are really a network of networks. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this community, as you know, as there's such a wonderful connection to everyone and everybody keeps in touch and keeps updated. So I was always in the loop with what is going on at the Charter. And about 3 years ago, I was asked to be a youth voice on our board of trustees. And when I started that role with a few of my other colleagues who are also youth voices scattered across the globe, what we realized is that although the Charter has such wonderful programming that does cater to youth, we don't necessarily, or at least at the time, we did not necessarily have a youth network. So I was brought on as the Charter's Global Youth Strategist to really put together and officialize what we now call the Global Youth Network. So I always say that it's a very interesting role for me to be in as a staff member as well as a Board of Trustees member, but it certainly does help me in all of our strategic planning. So that is what I'm currently doing at the Charter. So I guess you could say a huge part of my role is really being able to curate youth programming, really encourage and strengthen partnerships where there's a lot of youth focused work going on all over the world. So that's just some of the, I guess, one of the key areas that I'm deeply invested in right now as my role as global youth strategist at the Charter.
Okay, very good. It's amazing work that you do, and I think you are so good at it. So I'm glad you're part of the charter. So let's talk about the conference. So, how does a virtual international conference work?
Also, a fantastic question. So, as you know, Marge, our first, so we officialized our Global Youth Network right at the beginning of 2024. And while we had wonderful programming throughout the year, which included webinars, participating in person in different conferences, namely the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates in Mexico, we at the Charter really wanted to create an original programming in way of a conference. And putting that together in person, as you know, of course, would require, I'm assuming, more than just a year of planning. So our next best option was to explore the virtual space. And we found a fantastic platform called Ring Central Events through one of my colleagues, actually, Lucy Gray, who hosts a number of conferences through that platform. And I do say this with a little bit of bias, having participated in conferences through Ring Central. I think it is probably the most accurate online conference platform it in terms of, accuracy. I use that word in terms of bringing about the feeling of attending a conference in person. And I say that because, just the way the layout is designed. There are stages, there are session rooms, there are great networking tools, there's a speed networking tool. So you really do get the feel of having a being a part of a space where there are multiple people. And I know some other online platforms might not necessarily always cater to that. So once we identified that this is something that could really make our participants feel like they're attending an in-person conference, we were just taken with the idea, and we wanted to really curate different programming from all over the world that speaks to what is going on with youth in different regions, different industries. And that is how we came up with this project, which is now in its second year of running, which is the Global Youth Conference. So
Wow.
that's kind of the reason behind why we felt that a virtual conference might work. And I don't know if that answers your question, actually.
Yes, it does. I have attended one of the youth conference, the Ring Central conferences before, and I was
Mhm.
impressed. Whoa, it works well. Speed networking with people around the world was, well, you could say fun, but it was actually very worthwhile also. So yeah, anyone who may be hesitant about going to a virtual conference, I would say, don't be hesitant, give it a try. And I do believe youth are more apt to try such technology than an older person would be. So yeah, it's great. So uh, it may be self-evident, but can you articulate why it's important to have a youth conference? Why focus on youth?
No, absolutely, Margin. Thank you so much for asking that. And I actually love the way that you framed it, that it may be evident, but I think there are so many things that are evident. But when we go into the nitty gritty, sometimes they might not always, I suppose, present themselves in a way that is truly the need of the hour. But I, at least in my opinion, I feel like right now, given everything that is going on in the world today, the the number of the number of people that are impacted who are young individuals all over the world, through all of the social, political, humanitarian issues that are going on, we really need to be able to create a space for young people to not only learn skills and not only be able to showcase the community projects that are moving the needle forward in terms of creating some kind of sustainable change, or what the charter always likes to say, compassionate action. I think the biggest reason for wanting to create this space for youth through this virtual platform, calling it a conference, is also to really strengthen community. Because I think, and I know you and I have had so many conversations about this with everything that's going on in the world, whether that is the genocide in Palestine, whether that is the different political situations that are playing out all over the world, in the part of the world you live in and the part of the world I live in. I think there is a huge impact that is taking place on these young minds that are still very much being nurtured. So I think accepting that reality that we not only need to come together and strengthen community, as I said, but we also need to really be able to uphold an intergenerational aspect here of learning, of imparting wisdom, and that goes both ways. So I think these are just some of the reasons as to why this felt timely. And I know that we already spoke about last year's conference, but another thing is that we do want to make sure that the conference is centered on a theme. And I know you already mentioned the theme for this year, but I will tell you that behind the scenes we took quite a bit of time to narrow down on coming to the theme of compassionate leadership. And I think that really speaks to, again, what is going on in the world, and how we can really put forward a space again for youth to be able to understand that compassionate leadership is the way forward, and it is most certainly one of the obstacles to overcome in terms of the leadership that we see is the lack of compassion, is the lack of empathy. So I think, again, the theme has so much to do with why the youth conference is coming together at this particular time in terms of our current reality all over the world.
Okay. Very well said. Now, the organization Kids' Rights is a major partner. Who are
Yes.
they?
So kids' rights, they are doing fantastic work. And I'm just so grateful that the through the charter, I have been able to cross paths with them. So they are an organization based in the Netherlands, and they've actually been around for a number of years. And they work with young people all over the world. And again, very similarly to what we're trying to do through the Global Youth Network at the Charter, they really uplift different communities all over the world through a platform that they have called the State of Youth program. So I know that they have State of Youth chapters all over the world, and I suppose their biggest or one of their USPs actually is the Children's Peace Prize. So that's a fantastic recognition again of what I call compassionate leadership, or young people again really pushing the needle forward in their communities. And they have had some very notable recipients in the past, including Malala Yousafzai, Greta Thunberg, and I do know that last year's recipient is this inspiring young Afghan woman. I think her name is Nila Ibrahimi. So again, for anybody who's interested, their website, the Kids' Rights website, has all the information on their Children's Peace Prize. And I should also mention that they have a youth index, which again has been so helpful, at least to the charter and some of our partner organizations, because they're able to collect data. I think primarily from the global south is where that is more focused, but they collect this data and really bring across the numbers to show us how different policies, different economic structures in countries are impacting youth. So they are doing some fantastic work, and we were deeply honored when we were able to strike a partnership with them for the third day of the conference. So they will be taking over the third day with their original programming. So I definitely encourage all of those who are participating, even as attendees on the first 2 days for charter programming, to also sit in on the third day for kids' rights programming.
So, can you really talk about the goals of the conference?
Absolutely. So I feel like so much of the discussion we have is has really set a stage for that. But just to name a few of the objectives that we have listed down for this conference this year with the theme of compassionate leadership is, of course, right off the bat to cultivate leadership capacities in youth. And we aim to do that through offering capacity building workshops, which will be intergenerational. So we will be showcasing young individuals all the way from middle school, high school, university, working professionals in their 20s, 30s, as well as, more seasoned individuals who want to offer capacity building workshops. We are also aiming to do this through youth led sessions and panels. So, those are our three different categories of presentations in which our objectives, I think, really shine through. So, that's cultivating leadership in youth, empowering youth to lead with that agency and compassion and empathy. And I'm going to throw in courage as well, because I think that is much needed in the times that we are living in. And of course, really also, as I said right in the beginning, create a space for youth where they can find community and they can strengthen their partnerships all over the world for collaborative programming. For example, last year, one of the best things that came out of our conference was that more than two people were able to, and when I say two people, I mean two different instances, my bad, were able to connect with each other from different parts of the world and go on and create programming together. So we're really hoping for um, for us to be facilitators of that space, for even if it's just for one person who makes a connection with somebody else and they do some collaborative programming together, we would be very happy to be facilitators of that. So I think those are our main objectives, but
Okay.
also to just amplify youth voices through dialogue and discourse. And I think our panels will really speak to that one, because we have four different panels lined up with diverse topics and speakers from all over the world coming together to share their journeys and also be able to present call to actions to those who are participating as attendees of the conference.
Okay. So, there are different themes. And can you talk about that? And I'm wondering, are you doing the same as you did last year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So some of our themes remain the same, of course, when it comes to the overall objective of agency, compassionate action, how we really create a space for action and advocacy, which was our theme last year, compassionate actions and advocacy. But this year, our key themes, again, centered with this overarching bigger theme of compassionate leadership. I can speak to some of them. So this year, again, really trying to stay true to what is happening in the world. A central theme of the conference will be decolonization, identity, and intersectional justice, youth peace building and conflict transformation, compassionate governance and civic engagement, ethical innovation and digital leadership, because AI is a huge space right now. So we're hoping to be able to speak to that as well as compassionate economics and sustainable development. And of course, environment and climate justice is another big part of this conference, really speaking to the realities of what's happening all over the world. And I suppose my personal favorite, um, compassionate leadership and inner development, because I think that one is really the foundation or the bedrock of all of the other themes.
Wow. That sounds amazing. I'm going to attend, even if I'm not a youth. I really am impressed with what you were talking about. Now, can you talk about or highlight some of the presenters?
No, absolutely, Marjan. Thank you so much for asking that. And I actually love the way that you framed it, that it may be evident, but I think there are so many things that are evident. But when we go into the nitty gritty, sometimes they might not always, I suppose, present themselves in a way that is truly the need of the hour. But at least in my opinion, I feel like right now, given everything that is going on in the world today, the the number of the number of people that are impacted who are young individuals all over the world, through all of the social, political, humanitarian issues that are going on, we really need to be able to create a space for young people to not only learn skills and not only be able to showcase the community projects that are moving the needle forward in terms of creating some kind of sustainable change, or what the charter always likes to say, compassionate action. I think the biggest reason for wanting to create this space for youth through this virtual platform, calling it a conference, is also to really strengthen community. Because I think, and I know you and I have had so many conversations about this with everything that's going on in the world, whether that is the genocide in Palestine, whether that is the different political situations that are playing out all over the world, in the part of the world you live in and the part of the world I live in. I think there is a huge impact that is taking place on these young minds that are still very much being nurtured. So I think accepting that reality that we not only need to come together and strengthen community, as I said, but we also need to really be able to uphold an intergenerational aspect here of learning, of imparting wisdom, and that goes both ways. So I think these are just some of the reasons as to why this felt timely. And I know that we already spoke about last year's conference, but another thing is that we do want to make sure that the conference is centered on a theme. And I know you already mentioned the theme for this year, but I will tell you that behind the scenes, we took quite a bit of time to narrow down on coming to the theme of compassionate leadership. And I think that really speaks to, again, what is going on in the world and how we can really put forward a space again for youth to be able to understand that compassionate leadership is the way forward. And it is most certainly one of the obstacles to overcome in terms of the leadership that we see is the lack of compassion, is the lack of empathy. So I think, again, the theme has so much to do with why the youth conference is coming together at this particular time in terms of our current reality all over the world.
Okay. So the conference is October 28th, 29th, and 30th. And what happens if, say, you had to go out and play hockey, and when you wanted to, something was happening at this conference? What do you do?
So again, this is where Ring Central shines, is that they have a replay section. So as soon as a session or a panel is finished, if you're logging in even 2 minutes after, you'll be able to go back and watch that as a replay. But we did this last year and we plan to do it again this year. Is all of the recordings will be up on our YouTube playlist, our Charter for Compassion YouTube channel. And again, if anybody is interested to go and watch our recordings from last year's conference, that is up on our Charter YouTube page as well. So I think even if you're not able to be there live, you certainly have the option to watch the recording. But I will add that registering is key to be able to access those replays, because the way Ring Central works is you do have to register at least just to get into the platform, and then you can participate live or you can log in and watch the replays as and when you please.
Of course, you say youth should attend, but can you be more specific? Who should really be attending? Who do you want to be attending this conference?
So I'm going to say everyone, of course, because of course, it is a youth conference, but that by no means suggests that this is not open for any other age. Also, I do want to add, because I've been getting this question a lot, is how do you define youth? And I know that the UN caps youth at age 35. But again, in a very compassionate spirit at the Charter for Compassion, I think the way we view it, or the way I view it, is plus minus. I think it depends more on the work that you're engaged in, even if you are beyond 35 or much beyond. So In terms of who should attend, of course, everybody. But if we zero that down just a bit, we are hoping to be able to really impart, as I said, the knowledge, the skills, the wisdom, the different capacities that we want to cultivate for a younger audience. So that could be people who are still in high school or even in middle school or college students and young working professionals, because I think most of the programming will be geared toward that. But I also do want to add that, again, the intergenerational component is so important. And I know you and I both know this so well, that, through different words or learnings, there's just a spark that happens sometimes that could manifest into either actual action or programming, or even just a thought process that inspires you down the road. So I do think that we welcome everybody to attend, but of course, organizations that are working specifically with youth, young leaders, or those who are simply interested in learning from young people, even if they are not necessarily in that phase of life anymore. Everybody is.
Okay, I think you've convinced us to all attend. And registration, it's $10 to register, so it's not. And if that was an issue, you could still register. So cost is not an issue.
Yes, and Marge, sorry, just to quickly jump in here. So we do have a suggested donation of $10, but registration is free. So anybody, as you just said, and I do really want to stress on that, the reason we have made it free, and of course we welcome the donations by all means, but we do want to make sure that that is not a barrier for anybody to attend. So.
Anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it from my end. But I would just like to express my deepest gratitude to you, Marj, for having me on here. I am a fan of your podcast. I think you always handpick such interesting conversations and lead them with so much grace and compassion. And I'm sure that your listeners already know about the wonderful work that you're doing. But it is such a deep privilege and honor to work alongside you at the Charter. So I'm deeply grateful to share this space with you, and thank you again for inviting me onto your podcast.
You are very welcome. You are such a great person to talk to. Now, as I do end all my podcasts with the same question of all guests, I need to tweak it a bit because you're not really in my community. So I'm thinking the community for us will be the Charter for Compassion community. But I want you to name one thing that you really like about this community.
That is a tough one to narrow it down just to one. I think, well, if I had to, I would say that and this one might sound a little cheesy, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. I think the presence of compassion in our community at the Charter, I think that is, and I know, again, Marj, that you and I have had many conversations about this, especially with the realities that we are all navigating, either in person or from afar, in the world that we live in today. I think the recognition of compassion in those that are in our community is often what keeps me going, even on days where I feel completely helpless with the situations that are unfolding, where we don't know what to do, we don't know how to help. But I see that understanding and that deep desire to alleviate the suffering, which is often how we define compassion in the team and our volunteers and you in the Charter community. And that is truly what helps me get back onto the ground, to go back to the work that we are actually doing to amplify compassion and to create pathways to have compassionate action really be a reality in our community. So that is my very long-winded answer to your question.
Thank you for that. Well, very well said. So it has been great talking to you today, and we will see you around. And please, everyone, check out the podcast notes for the link for this conference. And wish you lots of success, and we'll see you online soon. Thank you for listening. I would very much appreciate you sharing this podcast. Consider emailing me at Marj, M-A-R-J, at marjandre.com. I welcome suggestions for podcast guests. Stay well, stay connected.